You know what I mean? All right, so we're gonna move right into the true crime segment, and in honor of it being Pride Month, I wanted to shed light on a case specifically that occurred within the LGBT community, and this was one that surprisingly I had never heard of. But the case of Britney Cosby and Crystal Jackson of Houston. And man, this case was crazy. The person that no one would have ever suspected, the person that seemed to be the most heartbroken and upset by their deaths, was actually the person that did it. And that is Britney Cosby. So basically, back in 2014, Britney Cosby and Crystal Jackson were living with Britney's great-grandmother in Houston. And, Crystal actually had a 2-year-old daughter that was also living with them. So that's Crystal on the left, and that's Britney on the right. And I believe maybe being in this type of relationship was new for Crystal, because, like I said, she had a daughter, and so her and her daughter lived with Britney and her great-grandmother. And apparently Britney's great-grandmother didn't have any problem with Britney being gay. I found a lot of pictures online of her being a stud for quite some time, like dressed in a certain way for quite some time. So it seemed like she had that support. That's her and Crystal. But Crystal's parents were very religious. Crystal's father was actually a pastor, so he didn't support her being gay at all, which is probably why Crystal moved out of his house. That's actually Britney's father. Okay. So that's probably why Crystal moved out of her parents' house and moved in with Britney. So Britney and Crystal actually kind of helped their great-grandmother around the house. Of course, it's helpful as an older woman having someone young to help, cook and clean and just company. And I have a really great relationship with my great-grandmother, so I can imagine that's probably how Britney's relationship was, because her parents weren't really just in her life like that. Her father was in and out of jail, although he had just moved back into the house that previous October after doing 2 years on a sexual assault charge. Yeah. Actually, he did the 2 years because he failed to register as a sex offender. So he had already done time for the actual assault, and then he didn't register as an offender, did 2 more years. So, not that I judge people for their past. He did his time. I don't know exactly the details of the assault, but that's the kind of guy we dealing with. So he was living there, and him and Britney, for some reason, just really didn't get along. And it came out later, Britney's mom expressed that he had told her a few times that he didn't like the idea of Britney being gay. But I mean, like I said, clearly this was who she was and had been for quite some time. So at a point or another, pretty much other people have found out about them getting into it. Her aunt also said that Britney told her about some times when they got into it. She pretty much told Britney, just try to stay out the way, stay low key. But Britney and Crystal was really doing good. So they had just got themselves a new truck. The baby girl was in school. They both working. They was both doing really well. You know what I'm saying? Like, they was happy, and they really didn't have no enemies. So it was crazy on March 7th when their bodies came up, dead on the side of a trash can, thrown out like they were just pieces of trash, pieces of garbage. Actually, a UPS guy who was taking some boxes out back, he remembers the way he talked about it was he went back in as soon as he saw like the legs and was like, "Did y'all throw out some mannequins?" And I can imagine that he didn't want it to be bodies. So eventually the police came out. They ended up finding a piece of Britney's mail. So where they were was completely outside of Houston. They were in this place called Port Bolivar, and you actually have to take a boat to get there. It's like an island right outside of Houston. And so they found a piece of mail, and that's when they ended up going to Britney's house, and they told her grandmother, her great-grandmother, and her dad. And her dad immediately kind of just started freaking out, starts crying, just like, what happened, what happened, what happened. And, you know, I'm sure that that's a hard thing for a parent to hear. Your child has been found dead.
Yeah.
So, and actually when they found the girls, it said that they found them like they was kind of entangled, like their legs was entangled together, and Britney's head was wrapped up in a sheet.
Oh, my.
And when they took the sheet off her head, they could see she had been shot in the head. She had a hole in her head. And so, you know, I'm sure that that's hard for a parent to hear, and even harder for the great-grandmother to hear.
Yeah.
You know, I know that was a lot for her. And Crystal's parents had been looking for her, and they had came by the house, and they was wondering where she was, too. She had only been missing, I mean, I'm not going to say only, but they had been missing for 2 days. And so Crystal's dad actually felt bad because the last time he saw her was when she came by to show him her new car. Like, she wanted him to be proud of her, but he said he was so stubborn because he was, you know, mad at the way she was living that he wouldn't even go outside and see it. So he was really, really broken when he found out that she was dead. So they end up, you know, of course, wiping down the whole scene, you know, getting all the evidence together, and they end up finding a fingerprint, like on some of the evidence by the trash can. So they run the fingerprint. It comes back as Britney's dad's fingerprint. Yeah. So at the moment they find that out, they go back to the grandmother's house, but the dad is at the candlelight vigil, and it's so crazy to kind of watch the footage, like, from the news, because he on the camera, like, you know, they got to find out what happened to my baby. The police doing what they do, but, you know, we need information. Somebody out there know what happened to her.
Yeah.
And at this point, so the police end up picking him up from the candlelight vigil.
Yeah.
They bring him in, and actually, so when they went to his house while he was at the candlelight vigil, they go in his room and use that, you know, like that light where they used to see if any blood has been cleaned up. The room lights up like the sky on the 4th of July. You know what I'm saying?
Crime scene.
Yes, that was the actual crime scene. So basically, him and Britney had gotten into some kind of argument, and he ends up hitting her in the head and ends up basically beating her to death.
Oh, wow.
And then Crystal come in, and he ended up shooting her. Like, it was just no reason, you know, for this to happen. And then this whole time, luckily, thank God, Crystal's daughter was in the car. So she didn't see what happened, but she did see her mom dead. That's tough. So then afterwards, he took the bodies, put them in the back of their truck. They actually had an SUV, and he took it to the ferry, and I guess rode the ferry, and dumped their bodies, like I said, like trash. Like, this is his daughter, and he just dumped her body on the side of a dumpster.
That's tough.
And yeah, it was crazy. The police pretty much had to put some pressure on him, but he did end up confessing. But it's just, like, when they showed the room, it was actually a lot of spots where he couldn't even get the blood up. So it's like, how can you even sleep in here,
man, for
seeing
real.
this blood?
I wouldn't be able to.
Man, like a fucked up individual. But luckily, he is, I mean, it doesn't bring the girls back, but he is in prison for life.
As he should be. That's crazy that, I mean, like, I couldn't think about my dad even thinking about murdering me.
That's the person that's supposed to protect you from everything.
Exactly.
Supposed to be a superhero.
Exactly. I don't know. I couldn't even imagine, and that's sad.
And I mean, he really hadn't been in Britney's life like that. He had kind of been like in and out of jail his whole life. Well,
which gives another reason why. Who is he to judge? Like, how somebody living a lifestyle? You just spent your lifestyle locked up,
messing up.
I don't know.
And then also, some people said that he was jealous of Britney because, You know, he is this pretty much jailbird, living in his mom's garage, don't really have nothing going.
Yeah.
And Britney is, you know, in a happy relationship. She probably was the apple of her grandmother's eye,
I'm sure.
constantly doing better, had just got her own car, and probably was going to get her own place, you know. But, I mean, I don't know if she was staying there specifically to help her grandmother. That's what it seemed like. You know, like she could have gotten her own place. So
Right.
he probably was jealous. But then also the police said that in his room, because he had become Muslim in prison. So in his room, the Quran was actually sitting like on his dresser,
Yeah.
specifically opened up to a passage about homosexuality being a sin.
Yeah, that's something.
So who knows if it was some kind of
Yeah.
quote unquote honor killing.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be. I don't know what they do in their religion. You know what I'm saying? If that's they thing or whatever, but some people do take that super serious, and that could have been a motive.
Man, I'm gonna say
But,
this.
yo,
I feel like
child,
I know
though?
what kind of nigga this is. You know what I'm saying? This the type of nigga been in and out of jail, don't have shit going, don't have
I know this
nothing
dude.
to grasp. Yeah, but want to
Yeah.
tell somebody, oh, because you gay, that's wrong.
Yeah.
Like, motherfucker, being a bum is wrong too.
Right. Forget
You know what
everything
I'm
else
saying?
you got
Like-
going on. Being gay is your main concern. That's
Like,
crazy.
obviously, you had me outside of wedlock. Ain't no telling you got other kids. Like, it's a lot of shit. Don't
Right.
tell me.
Right.
He the type of nigga that probably was like, you're not gonna bring that sin into my grandmother's household
Yeah.
or something. You know what I'm saying? Try to regulate some shit that you ain't got no power over. Like, fam, her name is on the deed to this house.
Right.
She
Oh,
didn't tell
man.
me she added you. Let me know.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that type of nigga to where you don't have no power, so you try to
Create
take.
some.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So, thankfully, that monster is off the streets for good.
For sure.
Brittany's mom says that she wished he would have got the electric chair. She wishes he would have got the death penalty. But, you know, we got to take what we can get sometimes. So he will never see freedom again. And that's the justice for these two young ladies that can be served. So, once again, rest in peace to Brittany and Crystal. We're gonna